global military spending has been on the rise, with the world's biggest weapons manufacturers recording a growth in profits for a sixth straight year. In a report by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, the top 100 weapons manufacturers have earned an estimated $66.8 billion in 2020. That's a 1.5% rise compared to the year before. The top 5 arms manufacturers were all from the United States, including Lockheed Martin, which ranks first. Britain's BAE Systems is in the 6th position, and the highest placed European firm, just ahead of 3 Chinese groups. Okay, now let me invite some guests and see what they think about it. So joining me will be Rodney Shakespeare, author and economist in London. Also John Bosnich, journalist and political analyst, is joining us from Basel in Switzerland, I suppose. Good to see you, gentlemen. Professor Shakespeare, the world has been witnessing, a host of economic issues, especially the past couple of years because of the COVID pandemic, but the arms manufacturers, they've been making big bucks. I mean, what does that mean? And the U.S. is at the top of the list.
Well, there's a strong sense of danger and foreboding in the world, and that, of course, is due to the environmental issue. The recent conference in Glasgow in the UK was a failure. And then on the economic front, all the indicators are worse than what they were in 2008. For example, private debt, corporate debt, national debt, it's all much worse. So there's a strong sense of risk and danger there. But also within that, there's this shift from a unipolar world to a multipolar world in which the Americans are behaving in a very dangerous way, which is going to lead to war. For example, they break agreements all over the time and then say, and you will do what we say. The agreement over Taiwan was one China, 2 systems. The Americans are breaking it and think that they can go to war against China. The Americans have got bases all around the world, yet they push against China, and they are pushing against Russia. The agreement was that NATO would not move towards the east. They moved at least 1,000 kilometers. And they wanted to, and they are wanting to put arms and NATO expansion into a fascist Ukraine, which wants to kill half its own Russian-speaking citizens. Russia won't stand for that. And they have made it quite clear what they would do. Any attack on those Russian-speaking Ukrainians, or any putting in missiles into Ukraine, and the Russians will act. And then there's Iran. I don't need to go into Iran. Another broken agreement. And they're still saying, you will do what we say. So there you are. It's an overall an insecure, developing situation, and that is leading to people buying more and more arms.
Right. Okay, John, how do you look at this? I mean, we have vaccine inequity in different parts of the world, and then we have the U.S. selling all those weapons to countries like Saudi Arabia and others, and they're taking, innocent people's lives. Kids are losing their lives to these international banned weapons. Saudis are buying them. British also people are selling more arms, and recently Chinese are also jumping on the bandwagon.
Well, I agree with your other guests today that this is a terrible situation, and it's getting worse. As the United States economy tries to make some kind of a recovery, there are high-ranking people within the United States that see military conflagration, an actual conflict, a war, as the best way to use weapons and therefore increase weapons production and produce jobs and profit. And that is a logical thing for them to do, since their society is based on making money. If those are your primary objectives, then you'll make money in any manner that you can do it. And we see very dangerous situations developing near Russia with the increasing penetration of the Ukrainian area by NATO advisors, NATO supporters, NATO arms dealers, in fact. And at the same time, we see increasing saber rattling around China on the part of the United States and England and their various military colonies around the world. So it looks like we're headed into a scenario where the rich and the richer are going to decide to have some kind of a conflict to make themselves yet richer. This is not the way things should be done, and everybody who's sensible knows that.
Right. Professor Shakespeare, what happens to human rights then? They're boasting and preaching of democracy and human rights, and they embark on, trying to make some regime changes in different parts of the world. They take soldiers elsewhere. They squander billions of dollars of money like they did in Afghanistan. And then, but when it comes to profiteering and making, big bucks, it doesn't matter where those arms are being used and who it's killing and taking lives.
What John Bosnich touched on the sort of the economics, and because what is happening is a complete erosion of human rights is actually taking place. And he mentioned the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. There are some very fundamental things going on at this moment, and they're leading to what they're trying to do is an elitist great reset. And all your rights, what you think are democratic rights, will go straight out of the window. And if you have anything at all, you'll just be controlled by one bank account and whatever and your social credit will be controlled. So all these things are interlinked, and there's a sense of foreboding, a sense of danger, and there's actual danger, as John has pointed out, particularly in Ukraine, where the Americans are behaving like. Well, they're just warmongers. They're out of control. That's the real problem, and they don't realize the new realities in the world.
Mm-hmm. And John, would the U.S. Congressmen and others, at the top, decide one day that these arms, they got to be accountable for what they're doing, what they're selling? I mean, would that happen one day? Because also we had Mr. Biden saying that this war, meaning the war on Yemen, should not go on, but it is going on.
The war on Yemen could be stopped in one day by the United States declaring an arms embargo on Saudi Arabia in one day, 24 hours. The United States government has a long proven career, regardless of who's in power, of saying one thing and doing another. They are actually fomenting these violent confrontations around the world. They staged and paid for the coup d'etat that created the entire crisis in Ukraine. They spent $5 billion of taxpayers' money on a foreign coup d'etat overthrowing a democratically elected president. This is the United States of today. We have to remember that the United States of today is no longer the America that's described in the U.S. Constitution. It has become an empire. And this is the final words of George Washington, the first president of the United States, was that the United States should refuse to become an empire because this kind of power corrupts. And America has an empire all around the world, and it is trying to maintain that empire despite the right of other people around the world to participate in world affairs. It is trying to maintain that empire by force of arms. That will fail, period.
Okay. Thanks a lot for your comments and inputs. Rodney Shakespeare, author and economist in London. John Bosnich, journalist and political analyst in Basel. And thank you for watching this edition of the News Review.